So Dana White just went out there and announced the UFC 317 International Fight Week card, and in this video I'm going to talk about every single fight that has been announced so far and just kind of give my opinion on it and my opinion on the card overall. This card actually was announced while I was at the gym, so I have just walked home in the rain and I haven't showered yet, so that's why I'm not quite looking as awesome and professional as I guess I typically do. But yeah, let's kind of break into it. The first fight of the night, well, the main event, the final fight of the night, I should say, is Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. I mean, we kind of knew that this was coming based on comments that were made, depending on the result of the Jack Della Maddalena versus Bilal Muhammad matchup. And this is it, Topuria versus Charles do Bronx. Honestly, very excited. Definitely an international fight week level main event. I mean, Topuria is a superstar at this point now in his career. Charles Oliveira, I love Charlie Olives, so for me this is kind of a win-win. Do I think that I would have been a bit more excited for Topuria versus Makhachev? I'm gonna say yes, but at the same time I am still quite interested in seeing how Makhachev can look at 170 pounds. And Jack Della Maddalena versus Makhachev does interest me a lot, especially because I think they're going to be doing that event in Perth. But as for this one here, the main event, Topuria versus Oliveira, I do think Makhachev would have actually beaten Topuria. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but I do think that the size advantage that Makhachev would have had over Topuria would have been like unbelievable, because Makhachev is massive for lightweight and so is Charles Oliveira. But if you guys do remember, when Oliveira fought Makhachev, Makhachev was the bigger fighter in there, and Charles Oliveira typically possesses a size advantage over his opponents. Now, I am kind of tempted to try and pick Oliveira here because I do think he's going to be a big underdog, but I can't really justify it, you know, because the thing about Topuria is, and I've said this many times, and I know a lot of people disagree with me on this, and maybe at this point, like, I think a lot of people think I say this just to be contrarian, but I genuinely don't. I believe that Topuria's grappling is better than his striking. But the thing is, in this matchup, Charles Oliveira's getting hits too much. You know, we saw him get caught by Michael Chandler. And the thing is, if you're getting caught by Michael Chandler, we just saw how bad Michael Chandler looked against Paddy Pimblett. Like, dude, seriously, the Chandler that showed up against Paddy Pimblett, I think Thiago Moises would have a chance of beating him. I'll be honest. Like, he looked terrible. And if Oliveira's getting caught by Michael Chandler just swinging hooks in out of nowhere, I know I call Topuria a hooks merchant himself because that's all he throws. Topuria's hooks are a lot better than Chandler's, and they're a lot better set up, and I think he is going to unfortunately catch Oliveira in moments, and I do think he probably does finish Charlie Olives. But the thing is with Charlie Olives, if he can get his grappling going, I do think that Topuria is going to be faster than him, obviously, overall, but I think if he can get some control and establish some control, like he did do against Beneil Dariush, of course, and like he did do against Arman Tsarukyan, and like he was kind of doing against Chandler, even though there was a lot of striking in that matchup overall, I think that he would have a chance of defeating Topuria here, but I do think Topuria's kind of threat on the feet is just going to be a little bit too much for my boy Charlie Olives. And I do find this hilarious because I think a lot of people are kind of getting, what's it called? Like, done dirty on this one. Because I feel like you could argue that maybe Tsarukyan's getting done dirty, but if he does have a back injury, he's not going to be back for ages. And I think the UFC is just upset with him for pulling out of the Makhachev fight. So that is what it is. And also, like, me personally, I thought Charles Oliveira won that fight. I know a lot of people think that's based on bias, but I think if you're going to go off the effective striking and grappling criteria that the UFC tries to throw in your face all the time, I think Oliveira's effective grappling outweighed what Tsarukyan did in the third round. So, this matchup, it's a good matchup. It's a fantastic matchup. It's great. I think we can probably move on, but I do think Topuria is going to win. I think I'm unfortunately going to have to pick Topuria by KO early leans, of course. I mean, the fight was announced an hour ago. Now, we have known about this fight for a very long time. I believe Benny P actually announced this like 2 months ago, but it's finally been confirmed official by Dana White. Kai Kara-France versus Pantosia. This is actually a rematch because Pantosia, of course, like he has done the entire flyweight division, has actually beaten Kai Kara-France before. Who has Pantosia not beaten in the flyweight division aside from Mikhaev, who's not even in the promotion anymore? I don't know if I could name one off the top of my head. I guess Askar Askarov, but he's at, what, ACA right now? Anyway, Pantosia has beaten everybody. We go through, it was a while ago, it was in 2016 when he did defeat Kai Kara-France on the Ultimate Fighter, And this is a rematch many years later. Now, a lot of people are complaining about this fight because Brandon Royval, you could argue, has been snubbed because he is on a very good streak right now. But my argument to that is we've seen Royval lose to Pantosia twice very recently in 2023 and 2021. Like, these are recent matchups, and I do genuinely believe that Pantosia would beat Brandon Royval again. So I don't think we need to do another fight between those two because Pantosia, just being the dominant champion that he is, he's kind of fallen under being too dominant for his own good, I guess, at this point now, with the lack of contenders that he can fight. I think that Pantosia versus Kai Kara-France is a better matchup for that reason. And then the other argument is Moano Karp. But the problem is with Moano Karp, he has proven to be a little bit unreliable recently, and I don't think they want to just reward him for that. You know, he has pulled out of a lot of matchups. He has been a little bit problematic with the Mikhaev situation. You know, that was a two-way street, even though Mikhaev was the one that got released for that reason. So I know it's coming from me, someone from New Zealand, justifying the matchup, but I do think that this probably is just the best option. And I do genuinely believe as well that Kai Kara-France does present a threat to Pantosia, because as much as I love Pantosia, I picked Pantosia to beat Moreno. I thought that he beat Moreno 3-2 pretty clearly, but live at the time I thought he won 4 rounds. I picked him to beat Royval, and I picked him to win all these fights since. And Kai Kara-France genuinely, and I've said this for a long time, has some of the best defensive wrestling and grappling in the UFC. You know, he can defend takedowns very well, and he does defend grappling situations if he's put in them very well. That's why he defeated Askar Askarov, you know. And on the feet, you know, I know that you could argue that Moreno was the better striker. He's beaten Kai Kara-France in a striking fight, of course, but France, though, against Pantosia, stylistically actually presents a little bit more of a variation of threat, because I think Kai Kara-France has the fast hands, you know, but he's also got a lot of kicks to back it up as well. A lot of body shots we're getting through against a lot of his opponents, and I think that he's going to be a more high volume guy for Pantosia to deal with, because Pantosia's striking, let's be honest, it's not that good. You know, he does genuinely run forward, throw in overhands with his head, sometimes looking at the ground, just to close the distance to get takedowns going. But, you know, Pantosia has been the dominant champion so far. He's already beaten half the flyweight division right now. It's hard to pick against Alejandro Pantosia, and I'm not going to do it. I am going to pick Alejandro Pantosia to win this matchup by decision. But I don't think that you can just fully discount Kai Kara-France here, because I think he is going to have a shot at a knockout win. But I think I've got to go with Alejandro Pantosia, though, just as my early lean in this matchup. The next thing that I want to bring up as well is, where is Zhang Weili? Because I feel like Zhang Weili versus Verona Jandiroba, or Zhang Weili versus anybody, would be the perfect feature fight on this card. You can have 3 title fights, and Zhang Weili is one of the most popular female fighters right now. I think it would make a lot of sense to put her on there. Now, there is a lot of rumors going around right now that they're going to do a fight night in China. I've read that in a couple of different places, so we'll see if that happens. Maybe they're going to have her headline a fight night, but for me personally, I don't think that there's really any reason why Zhang Weili is so inactive as she is, because she beats everyone in the division, in my opinion, and you know, like, I don't think she's injured, so I don't really know what she's doing, why she's not fighting so often, because I feel like that would be a perfect third fight to have on this card, because I feel like after the title fights, the level of the fights, or the excitement of the fights, drops off quite considerably. I don't know about you guys, maybe I'm just a casual, I don't know, but like, I feel like if you had Zhang Weili, a third title fight on here, the excitement would be definitely a lot more, you know, or even like, I know Harrison versus Pena has been booked now, has it not? But I mean, that would be a good fight as well to add to this card, but that's just kind of a little side tangent, I guess. Paulo Costa versus Kopylov. I mean, Costa's going to be fun at the press conference. Kopylov, maybe not so much, but when it comes down to the fight, it's a striker versus striker matchup. It's going to be a good one. Paulo Costa's been losing a little bit recently, by a little bit I mean a lot, but he has been competitive. He did, of course, beat Luke Rockhold in that fight that went pretty viral, and then after that, lost to Whitaker, lost to Strickland in a competitive matchup. I think Kopylov versus Costa's fun. I mean, Vettori versus Costa in a rematch in the press conference for this fight would have been better, I think. But I can't complain about this fight. It's probably one of the more fun middleweight matchups you can make But I do think that Kopylov would actually win it as well, out of the two. Darush versus Moicano. I believe this was just very recently announced. I like it a lot because Moicano is going to be a lot of fun at the press conference. If he wins, he's going to have very fun on the interview. And, you know, this is just a good opportunity for Moicano, I do believe, now to kind of get one back after he lost to Makhachev on short notice, you know. He did get smoked by Makhachev, but at the same time, he just smoked Benoit Saint Denis, who didn't look that good against Pripolek, but you know, it's a good win. It's a fantastic win to have, especially the way that he did it. And he also smoked Jalen Turner after getting knocked down himself. Renato Moicano, he's 36. I think a lot of people don't realize how old he is. He's been in the UFC for a long time at featherweight and now lightweight. Taking on Darush, who's also aging at this point too. Darush, at one point, of course, if you guys may or may not remember, was the guy that was slated to potentially be one of the biggest threats to Islam Makhachev. And stylistically, that is true. We just saw Darush. I mean, we saw him 2.5 years ago against Darush out scramble Mateus Gamrot. You know, and Gamrot is one of the best pure wrestlers in the UFC. So Darush, you know, had a good performance there. But then, of course, he did fall short to my king, Charles Oliveira, and then Arman Tsarukyan, of course. Now I feel like at this point, unfortunately for Darush, he never got the title shot that I think a lot of people could argue that he deserved. And against Moicano, though, genuinely, he does present a threat in this fight because Moicano isn't that great on the feet, in my opinion. And Darush, you know, his boxing is pretty solid. You know, he doesn't really get knockouts on the feet, but he is going to be the better striker in this matchup, in my opinion. And the thing about Darush as well is he can scramble very, very well. So it would be interesting to see how Renato Moicano can kind of deal with that threat, because I think Moicano is going to have a size advantage here. But it's just an interesting matchup. Like, genuinely, I don't think that this is the best matchup they could have possibly made, but it is a very intriguing one. I think for now I'm going to have to side with Moicano, but honestly, closer to the time, like being like fully transparent, I think my pick could flip. I think I could potentially convince myself to pick Beneil Dariush in this matchup, just given the fact that he can scramble so well. What scares me, though, is just the fact that Oliveira was able to control him pretty easily, and if Moicano gets control, he does do a lot of damage, but I am quite looking forward to this matchup. It's quite a good one. Alright, let's move through these fights pretty quickly. Johnson versus Zhuba. Fun fight. Michael Johnson, you know, he's on a run. he's back on his title run, guys. But yeah, I think this is a fun fight. Zhuba, of course, a fun kickboxer. I mean, I was going to say a boxer, but he has been kicking a lot from range. And Johnson's a fun boxer that does shoot for takedowns. I think it's a potential good matchup for Zhuba to get a big name on his record, because Johnson, you know, of course we know, has been around for a long time. You name any of the greatest lightweights of all time, Michael Johnson has probably fought them. And funny enough, Michael Johnson has probably beaten them as well. That's kind of like a legendary legacy that Michael Johnson is going to leave behind. Kind of an underrated fighter, and I feel like now that he's at the end of his career, I think it's now kind of time to start giving him his flowers for you know, just being that guy. You know what I mean? Just fighting anybody, anywhere, and even beating them at a lot of moments too. But yeah, I think Zhuba, at this point in his career, he did have a bad loss to Ridovich. Or not a bad loss to Ridovich, sorry, I excuse me there. But he had a bad loss to Trey Ogden, where he got outstruck by Trey Ogden. But Ogden's striking's come along a lot recently, but I think Zhuba should be able to win this one over Johnson. And now we have Brandon Royval versus Manel Karp. I think that this is a fun fight. You know, Royval just had one of the best performances of his career. Not against Tatsuro Taira, but yes, also against Taira. I thought Royval was going to win. And then, dude, actually, like, Royval not getting a title shot is kind of crazy. But I do think that my points still stand about him losing to Pantosia twice recently. He has had two of the best performances of his career against Tatsuro Taira and Brandon Moreno. And then Manel Karp also just had one of the best performances of his career against Almabayev, and even against Bruno Silva when he was styling on him. So the winner of this fight definitely gets a title shot. There's no doubt about that. And it's guaranteed to be fun. You know, Royval's a massive guy for this weight class. Manel Karp, not so much, but he's fast, he's dynamic, he's powerful. It's going to be a good matchup between two guys. I honestly think right now I'm actually going to lean... I'm gonna lean Royval based on the Makayev matchup because Royval is like a more dangerous Makayev on the feet. Obviously, I mean Makayev isn't really a striker, and Royval can grapple too. That's the thing. Royval can strike and grapple. He's gonna have a big size advantage, and I think it's gonna come down to that. You said maybe this is on the main card, maybe it's not. I know that the UFC currently is advertising this fight on the main card. If you guys have got that Instagram notification of the card, this is the 5th fight on the card, indicating that it could be on the main card. I love Justin Tuffer more than the next guy. You know what I mean? He was born in New Zealand. He represents Samoa and New Zealand. And in Australia, I guess, but he did say in an interview at Samoa, New Zealand, Australia, so I can respect that, I can respect that hierarchy, you know what I mean? But, yeah, I love the Tuffer bros. You guys know that I'm Tuffer gang, but this isn't a main card fight, man. Like, it's not, you know, and I just love Tuffer, man. I really do. I love the Tuffer gang, but this is such a bad matchup for him, dude. Like, Denise, a former Glory kickboxer. Is he the best Glory kickboxer to come into the UFC? No. But, like, is he powerful? Yes. Very powerful. I mean, if you guys remember, if he wasn't a total idiot, he would have knocked out Marcin Tybura. Justin Tuffer is just going to stand and bang with him. Here's the thing, though. Again, I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it, and a lot of people are starting to catch on to this take. Denise is slow, man. Like, he's a really slow heavyweight, and Tuffer does have fast hands. The problem is, I just do think that if someone's going to land first, it is going to be Denise, but I feel like maybe that's why the UFC loves this fight, because someone is going to get knocked out, let's be honest. I do unfortunately think it's going to be Justin Tuffer. I love Tuffer, man, I really do. But, I think Denise gets this one, unfortunately. Let's not end on a sad note. Tracy Cortez versus Viviane Araujo. I mean, I guess the winner fights Jasmine Vicious, unless they can somehow find someone else for Jasmine. I don't actually know what flyweights aren't booked for a fight. Maybe it's going to have to be Manon Fiorot versus Jasmine Vicious in France in, like, September, because they always go to France around that time. I don't know. But, I mean, I think I've got to go with Cortez, right? Are people picking... yeah, people are picking Cortez in this matchup. Cortez's boxing did look good. I mean, against Jasmine Vicious, but then, like, we kind of realized that she just doesn't take her career seriously at all against Rose Namajunas. So that kind of makes it hard. But Araujo's well-rounded. Araujo can grapple. She can strike. She's more of a striker, in my opinion, even though a lot of people disagree with that on that. But I think that Cortez is just going to be the better boxer in this fight if she can keep it on the feet. And then Jack Hermanson is back. Hermanson just kind of, he beats prospects and he disappears. He beat Chris Curtis when Curtis was on the come up, and then he disappeared. Oh, he didn't. She fought 4 months later against Elidze. Ignore that comment. But then he beat Joe Pyfer and then he disappeared. Yeah, I was gonna say he beat Shabazz. Yeah, anyway, the point is Hermanson just beats prospects and then we never hear about him again. But I do think in this fight against Rodriguez, I think Rodriguez will beat him. The thing about Hermanson, though, is he does have a pretty tough style for literally anyone to deal with, because he is so pressure forward, because he does like to break his opponents, you know. Like, the funny thing is, usually when, like, a fighter breaks an opponent, it's because they're pressuring forward and landing volume. He mentally broke Chris Curtis by moving backwards. Because Hermanson, he's not an idiot, you know. Like, if you're going to stand in the pocket and box up with Chris Curtis is going to win that matchup 10 times out of 10. You know, I feel like you could, like, nearly every single middleweight on the roster, if they just fought in a close quarters boxing match with Chris Curtis wins that. And then, because Hermanson didn't want to fight that fight with Curtis got mentally broken by Hermanson not engaging in his game plan. But in this one, though, you know, Rodriguez, he just had a somewhat fun fight against Cannonier, let's be honest. In the main event, got knocked out, but Rodriguez is a good dynamic striker. He can wrestle. He's a national wrestling Brazilian champion, if you can believe it. Oh, I mean, it's hard to believe because he never uses it, but he is a good wrestler. Yeah, we've seen it use it somewhat recently. I think that Rodriguez is going to come forward. He's a big guy, he's a powerful guy. You know, Hermanson ain't going to be able to run away from this one. You know what I mean? I think Rodriguez gets it done. Let me know what you think in the comments about this card. 20-minute video. Hopefully you guys didn't mind the length of that one. I know that Dricus du Plessis versus Chimaev was also announced. If you want me to make a separate video on that, let me know. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do. I know I don't really ask for people to subscribe. I've never really done it, but BitSam is trying to beat me to 15,000 subscribers, and the loser has to buy $150 worth of KFC for the other person. And I tell you guys, you know, I don't have $150 to spend on KFC for someone else. So help a brother out. Anyway, I'll see you guys on the next one.